Which episode is it? Oops. Four? How do we start? Hello, welcome to the Middle Ground. I'm your host today, Valeria Izhik. Born and raised in Brussels, our guest has turned his hometown into his greatest muse. While most of us just complain about the weather and traffic, he's been out capturing the city's hidden magic through his lens, from quiet streets to buzzing nightlife. His street photography has turned everyday Brussels moments into stories that caught an eye of Vice and even the Belgian consulate in Hong Kong. A true Bruxellois with an eye for the unexpected. Please welcome Mehdi El Taghdouini.
Thank you for having me.
Mehdi, like many people, you collected money and then spent it on an expensive camera. It probably took some time before you finally took it in your hands and transformed it in something bigger than your hobby. Tell me, how did this transition happen?
Well, you're absolutely right. So I spent a lot of money, actually, like I would say 80% of my savings at the time. I had just graduated, so I didn't have a lot of money, but I had just enough to buy a camera. I spent it on a camera and a couple of lenses. And when I bought it, to be honest, I didn't know what to do with it at all. And I did it because I was quite frustrated with where I was at in life. I had just graduated. I wasn't really looking forward to start working, get into the workforce, and just having a 9 to 5 to look forward to, basically, with nothing else. So I thought that I would spend a little bit of money on a camera because I always thought that photography was cool and people who had a camera were kind of cool. And
You,
so,
you kind of look cool. So you're gonna fit into this general image of street photographers.
thank you, thanks, I appreciate it. And so, yeah, I bought a camera, and for the first few weeks, I really regretted it because I was a lot of money down, and I didn't, gain a hobby or gain any new insight into what I wanted to do for the future at that point in time. And so I had to really force myself to pick up my camera and take it outside and start shooting. And so I started with whatever I could possibly find. So trees, cars, clouds, the sky, whatever. I just took, loads and loads of pictures. And I don't know, but there was something really satisfying with photographing people. And I decided to follow my gut, and I decided to follow the feeling that it was giving me, which is how I ended up doing street photography full time, actually, after I graduated. So I didn't work for a while. And when I spent the remaining 20% of my savings, that's where I really felt like I had to get a job. So
Did you happen to have any relative who is also as arty as you are, or how how did it happen that you entered such a artistic and creative job?
no, actually, I'm the first one in my family. I have a very large family, but most of them, I would say, are in traditional jobs.
Hmm.
And of course, they have a hobby outside of work, and they have their own occupations. But none of them actually, you know, have an artistic practice outside of work. It's like going to the gym or something like that. But for me personally, yeah, I always felt like this was part of my identity. I had a few manifestations throughout my life that I may have, or may not, I don't know, but I may have a certain predisposition for self-expression in art. I didn't know how to treat that. I didn't know how to follow that gut feeling. And picking up a camera and really, allowing myself to shoot pictures of whatever I wanted was actually the first time where I explored, that possibility, not just as a hobby, but also as something bigger. And so, yeah, I was the first one in my family. And to be honest, it's been very hard to try to convince my mom and my brother of the usefulness of what I do. But it's been 7 years now, and they understand. And in the meantime, a few very positive things have happened with my photography, so now they understand. But when I started photographing random people on the street, it was very difficult to convince them. My mom was just like, "What the hell are you doing with your time? Whatever, you know."
I can imagine that it must have been really hard to become a photographer in the family where your older brother is CEO of a biotech company,
Yes.
right? And he followed quite a conventional path. So, 3 kids, PhD. How does it feel to be the first one who actually broke that pattern?
Um, I don't think I broke a pattern. Perhaps because I also have a traditional job outside of my photography, and I also went to college and I graduated, didn't get married and didn't have children, so that's still on the to-do list, I would say. But yeah, it's true that I mean,
To our listeners and viewers, still on the list.
thanks, I appreciate it. Thank you. um,
Reach
and so yeah, I mean, in a way, I also had a very traditional path, I would say. But it's true that my brother has really had a very clear vision of what he wanted his life to be like. And I remember when we were teenagers, we would talk about it. And at the time already, he was 15, I was 10. He would tell me like, I want to become a father, I want to have a PhD, I want to do this, I want to do that. And so, being the little brother of a man like that is, I wouldn't say it's tough. I think it's quite inspirational, actually. But it's true that on many occasions I struggle to build my own identity and my own journey, because whether you like it or not, or whether you want it or not, you always you know want to emulate
out.
the people who were there before you, and in this case it was my older brother. So that's something that I had to grapple with inside my own head, how much of what I'm doing and what I want to do in life is really my own personal choice, and my own personal desire versus what my brother has showed me that works.
Yeah.
And what worked very well for my brother, he was, yeah, getting married at 22, nailing his PhD at, I think it was 24 or 25. He's going to turn 37 soon, and he has his house, he has his 3 children, the oldest one is 12. And he has his own company and he's leading his own company, so congratulations to him. But yeah, it's true that around the dinner table, when you have a brother like that saying like, "Hey, look at the pictures I took today," it's kind of weird, because I mean, you always feel like you're. I wouldn't want to use the word useless, but like
Mm.
it's a little bit of less importance than what he does, and so that's a little bit of an insecurity that I've always had. I'm sure he knows it, but that's my own personal problem, obviously.
In one of your TikTok videos, you're saying that you're a Moroccan in Belgium and a Belgian in Morocco.
Hmm.
How would you explain this double identity?
Uh, I think it's a pretty common experience for people who are born and raised in a country but originally from another. So their parents were immigrants or their grandparents were immigrants. Um, because I mean, you have your own microculture at home. The language you speak, the food you eat, the way you arrange your days. I don't know. If you're from the south, for example, you're probably used to having dinner at 9 p.m. at the earliest, for example, which is the case for us. We're originally from Morocco. I'm sure that Spanish and Italian and Portuguese people will relate, Algerians and Tunisians as well. So you have that at home, and then obviously when you go outside, people in Belgium don't have dinner at 9 p.m. So there's a little bit of that. I wouldn't say clash, but
Mm.
coexistence of two different ways of living your life. Um, and I mean, if you also have, I would say, noticeable traits of being an immigrant, for example, or being of a different faith or a different background. I think, for example, of women, Muslim women
Yeah.
who wear a veil, for example, then yeah, it can be extra difficult to integrate. People might not be so willing um, to accept you, or classic cases of racism or xenophobia, etc., etc. So when you're on the receiving end of that, you can like close yourself off a little bit and go back to your original culture, which in my case is Moroccan, for example. And I think that that's a pretty common experience. I mean, I've had these different stages of in my life where I felt like, I live in Belgium, but I'm
Mm.
originally from Morocco. I'm Moroccan, and then you travel to Morocco, and people hear you speak French on the street on a market, for example, and then all of a sudden, prices triple for you, because they think like this guy comes from Europe, he's got a lot of money. That's also a pretty common experience, and so you end up, not knowing exactly where you fit in.
Mm.
And for some people, I think it really depends how you see that. For some people, it can be a negative. It can really, stress them, make them anxious. And for other people, it can be a strength. They can take it as, I feel like I'm from two countries, but I'm not exactly from either one. So I'm going to build my own identity, and I'm going to stay in that gray zone in the middle. And that's how you become someone who in many ways is kind of unique. So personally, that's how I live it. But I know other people who really struggle with that.
Similar to the market experience, do you feel like there is something that keeps the wall up for the artists of different background here in Brussels? And do you envision any obstacles for you to enter this artistic Brussels
Mm.
bubble?
Um, Obstacles, yes, of course, but I mean, as in every endeavor, I would have obstacles if I wanted to start a business. I would have obstacles if I wanted to date someone. I would have obstacles like in everything. So the obstacles, I don't really let that discourage me or guide my choices. If I really want to have a career in art, if I want to exhibit my pictures, if I eventually want to sell them, I'm pretty confident that I can figure it out. Regardless of the amount of years that it's going to take. So sure, like there are obstacles now. Are there particular obstacles in Brussels, and especially for people of different backgrounds? I don't know. I learned photography by myself, and I'm entirely self-taught. And perhaps the challenge that comes with that is that you're inside your own little bubble. You just create, and then you don't do anything else. And what I've learned over time is that there are different sides and different layers to being an artist. One of them is definitely your creation, your craft, and then another one is like networking, getting putting yourself out there, and that is something that I think most artists kind of struggle with, because creating is one thing, and then for the rest you need to be good at marketing and sales, which is for a lot of artists a challenge, because marketing and sales has a little bit of a bad rep. They're like, I'm not going to be the one reaching out to a gallery, for example. I'm going to wait for them to come to me, etc. They want to keep their art pure in a certain way. They don't want to make it dirty
Mm.
with these little tricks and tactics, and this aggressive communication and all of that. So um, I mean, I'm not like that. I'm sure I could do a lot more to get myself to put my name out there, but I haven't so far. It's really challenging to talk
Mm.
about your own art, and to post on Instagram and TikTok and all these platforms, and have your own portfolio and website, and even like sending emails out, etc. That's really takes a lot of time, and ultimately it takes time away from creating, which is
Yeah.
a balance that sometimes I struggle finding, to be honest. So I think that as long as someone does that on a consistent enough basis, they could be found by enthusiasts and people who would potentially want to consume or want to buy their art. And I think that social media is great for that. It kind of equalizes the field a little bit. But if we're really talking about traditional the traditional art space, which is what a lot of artists want still to this day. You know, they want to be validated by a gallery. They want to have their work exhibited internationally. They want to reach, you know, private collectors. Yeah, this can be very challenging, and not because, you know, I'm an immigrant or something like that. I don't really want to use that as an excuse,
Mm.
but mostly because um, traditionally, I think that's always how it worked. So there are, you know, how do you call that? There are, yeah, barriers. People who make sure, or institutions that make sure that the right art ends up in front of the right eyeballs.
Mm.
Why? I think because it guarantees a certain quality. It guarantees a certain, posterity into the future. Will that work, you know, survive the test of time? Will we 50 years from now still consider this work great art? You know, does it make sense in the entire history of this particular art medium, whether it's painting, photography, etc. So there are like all these little boxes that an artist has to tick
Mm.
before he gets or she gets validated by a gallery or an institution, and that's very hard. I think, yeah, it must be pretty hard. I personally don't know many people who have gone through that journey. I haven't myself, or at least not yet. Hopefully, I can. I don't know. But I'll just keep working hard and putting myself out there, and then hopefully, yeah, one day somebody will respond. But I don't really put myself under pressure too much, you know, to reach that goal.
Mehdi, I know many styles of photography, but the street photography is very particular because, as far as I understand, there is no explicit consent when you go to the streets and make photos of people here and there. Could you please explain to me how it works?
I'll give you a very simple answer that might surprise you and surprise the listeners because I've been doing that for years, but I actually don't know. And the reality is that I don't really want to know. I don't want to know because I don't want to go on the street and have this extra layer um, of is what I'm doing right? Am I doing something illegal here? Am I going to get in trouble if I get found out, etc.? I When I shoot pictures, I'm not hiding my camera when I'm on the street. I, put it to my eye, I smile, I dress well. If people want to address me, I don't hide what I do. I said, hey, I thought you looked great. I thought you were part of something beautiful, whether it's the background, whether it's a scene or whatever. And yeah, and I took a picture. Here it is. And by the time we get to that point, people are pretty actually, pretty chill. They're like, oh, thanks. It's like most of the time they actually thank me.
Hmm.
They're like, oh, thanks for taking a picture. And I just propose like, do you want me to send it over? And then I take their email address and I send it over. And that's the end of that. Should that be illegal? Do we want to live in a society where these kind of things are not possible anymore? I don't know. I mean, if there are laws that prohibit street photography and that prohibit, taking pictures of strangers and then, exhibiting that picture, publishing that picture, selling that picture. I'm sure that the intended goal of that was to not defame people, so not using their image to twist, their image basically, so who they are, etc., etc. So nobody here wants to one day open Instagram or TikTok and find a picture of a relative or someone we know being used as a meme or to make fun of. You see what I mean? So
Yeah.
like I think that that's where the limit is, and that's probably what the existing laws around street photography were trying to limit or were trying to contain. But if it's non-threatening and if it's not done in a defamatory, or maybe I'm inventing a word here, I don't know, but you see what I mean. If it's not done in that way, I think it's fair game. I think it should be, you know because here we talk about consent, we talk about the privacy of people who are on the other side of the lens. But I like to think that we live in a democracy that believes in free speech, and I think that the right of free speech that the photographer has, which is that I want to pick up my camera and I want to go on the street and I want to be able to photograph anything I want. I think that that should also be guaranteed and that should also be defended.
Mehdi, if you could curate your own exhibition in Brussels, having all the freedom of the world, what kind of story would you like to tell about Brussels and its people?
To show that Brussels is a city of many faces. Despite its relatively small size, no, not relatively, it's very small. Um, it's a city that has a lot of different vibes and a lot of different identities. And I think that I could always, add more to the body of work that I already have. But I think that the body of work that I already have kind of shows that. I've photographed Brussels at night. I have photographed Brussels in color, in black and white. I have photographed inside nightclubs and bars and other places where people gather at night. Um, I'm sure that there are other faces of Brussels that I could still, photograph a little bit more deeply. But generally speaking, I think that that's what my exhibition would show.
When you look back to your photographies years from now, what kind of story does it tell about you?
Oh, about me. Um, my photography, the story that I would like my photography to tell about me is that I'm someone who lived in the present moment, and I'm someone who really lived in the places where he lived. I didn't just exist. I really lived. So I went outside. I photographed. I interacted with people. I saw places. I got I tried to understand the way people go about their life, go about their day. The different microcultures and communities that a certain place has, and there's loads of them in Brussels. That's what I would want my photography to tell me. At the end of my life, I would want to look back on my work and think that I've seen places and that I've experienced a lot of the things that this messed up world of ours has to offer.
And it brings me to the question about the middle ground, because we're all sometimes anxious and overwhelmed in this city with many
Mm.
faces. So, what would be your definition of the middle ground?
So, long story short, for me, the middle ground is art, family, work, and physical fitness. That's how I keep myself sane.
Okay, as Victoria said, it's been very serious this interview, so it's time for stupid jokes.
I'm all for it. Let's go.
Brussels by day or by night?
By night, because I feel like at night people are more themselves.
What's your favorite photographer?
Joel Meyerowitz and Harry Gayart, who's Belgian.
What's your favorite cultural institution in Brussels?
Hangar Photo Art Center in Châtelain, because they organize all sorts of photography exhibitions, and a good portion of them are street photography.
Do you need to be shameless in art?
Oh, that's a tough one. Do you need to be shameless in art? I don't know about other art forms, but in street photography, yeah, you need to be a little bit of a stalker and a little bit of a voyeur. I don't know what's
Mm.
the word in English, but yeah, you need to be weird.
Mm. Where do you bring your friends if you want to prove that Brussels is cool?
I don't need to prove it. Brussels is cool, and I'm sure they can see it by themselves. But if you want an answer, I'll tell you. Anything that sits between Place de la Bourse and Place Flagey. So that would include the European Quarter, parts of Saint-Gilles, parts of Ixelles, and maybe a little piece of Uccle. I really like this area. That's where I usually walk, back and forth for my photography as well.
And finally, if Brussels was an animal, what kind of animal would it be?
If Brussels was an animal, what animal would it be? How necessary are pigeons to the animal ecosystem? I don't know, because I think that Brussels would be a pigeon. Like, everybody thinks that it's like a useless city, boring, that there's nothing there, and so it kind of blends in, and it's just there, like nobody minds it, just like pigeons. But it's actually very important. But now I don't know if the comparison is good because I don't know how important pigeons are.
Okay, it was clear that rapid fire questions were not really rapid. We're both too philosophical, but I hope that our audience will forgive it.
Sorry.
We have a tradition at the middle ground
Mhm.
to ask every previous guest to prepare a question for the next one. And the one for you
Mhm.
is, what is the most exciting thing that's happening in your life now?
The most exciting thing that is happening in my life right now. So I just came back to Brussels after living for 3 years in Barcelona. So I'm really excited to reconnect with my city and discovering what changed, because I'm sure that in the last 3 years a lot of things have changed. And in the next year, I also want to be a lot more aggressive with putting myself out there, reaching out to institutions, partnering with institutions, exhibiting my work, posting on social media. That's also something that I'm really looking forward to. And being back in Brussels, I think, is the right occasion to do that.
So, what's your question to our next speaker?
I'd be curious how the dating life in Brussels is for that particular person, because I think we all have a different experience, or maybe we all have the same. I don't know. For me personally, I just came back here. I'm single. I think I said it at the beginning of the episode. And sure, I have all these things going on, my projects and my full-time job, etc. But I do want to find a little bit of time for that, and I just don't know what I'm going to find, because obviously Brussels has changed. I didn't have a particular good memory of Brussels before I left, so I don't know if it got worse or if it got better. If it got worse, you can count me out already, and if it got better, well, I'm looking forward to see what it's going to be like.
As a tradition at our show, we ask our guests to bring something they can't live without in Brussels. What would it be for you?
Well, typical answer, I think, based on the conversation we just had, would be my camera. Obviously, shooting pictures. I take it with me everywhere. I take it to the supermarket. I take it absolutely everywhere. But I also have another answer, which is this. I lived in Spain for 3 years. I didn't need this at all. And now I think I'm going to have to learn how to use this little thing again, because, just, the couple of months I've been back, I've seen the four seasons already. So, the umbrella. There you go.
I'm wondering when some of our guests will start bringing coffee or energy drinks, because honestly, with this weather, I can't survive without my own guilty pleasure. And it became kombucha for me.
Yeah.
So honestly, to live through the 2 jobs and preparation for this passion project, I need this. So. It's Belgian.
Look, it's so good. She spilled some of it on her shirt.
So it's time to wrap it up, because we're gonna finish our drinks. It was a pleasure, Mehdi, to learn a little bit more about street photography, to break this wall between people like me who don't know anything about it, and artists of the city with different background, those who definitely have something to say. We make sure that more people know about you, and we hope to visit your first exhibition in Brussels.
Thank you for having me on this podcast. I wish you all the best with this little project as well. It was a very nice discussion, and I have absolutely no doubt that you will be successful.
Cheers to that.
Cheers to that. Thank you.